Road and trail. One, one. Hey guys, Paul Ronto here from Run Repeat, and today we're here to check out the Hoka Challenger ATR 6. This is Hoka's road and trail shoe. It's kind of a mix, a commuter. It's designed for those runners who need to run on the road to the trail or vice versa, and need traction on both surfaces. Hoka's updated the lacing eyelet structure a little bit, but otherwise the shoe has remained relatively the same as the Challenger ATR 5. Are you guys running on a max cushion shoe? And if so, what got you to change over? Answer in the comments below. Love to hear your thoughts. Okay, as we like to do, talk about the likes. Let's start with the upper. The upper is a dual mesh upper. It's breathable. It's not highly breathable. I'll talk a little bit about that in the cons, but it accommodates my foot well. As you guys know, I've got a slightly wider foot, and this shoe seems to fit that pretty well. The upper has a little bit of flex to it. Overall, I'm pleased with how this upper performs. Next is the tongue. It's got a nice padded tongue. It's also gusseted. Well, it's semi-gusseted. It's got some mesh that attaches the top of the tongue down to the strobel board. It is a nice padded tongue for those of you that like a little bit of padding up top. Heel counter on this shoe, super stiff. Pretty crazy stiff. Normally I don't like a really stiff heel counter. This is also highly padded, but you know what? My heel didn't slip in it, so I'm okay with it. Normally I like shoes with a little bit less padding in the back there, a little bit less stiffness, but this worked. My foot had good lockdown, and as you noticed, they left a little heel loop, which I like. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the midsole. This is a CM or compression molded EVA midsole. There's a little bit of rocker in it to help the transition. It runs really smooth, to be honest. You know, this midsole is insanely soft. It's honestly like running on clouds, which is great if you want comfort. We're gonna talk a little bit more about this in the cons, because I did feel, although it's bouncy and soft, it felt a little sluggish and slow to me. So we'll talk about that in the things I disliked about this shoe. The one thing I will say that I do like about this shoe is the amount of cushioning. When you're going downhill, this thing just tears it up. You really can go over any terrain. You don't feel a lot of the ground feedback. If it had a little more grip, I think this midsole would be fantastic on the downhill, but I had some issues with grip as well. Let's move on to the dislikes. Yeah, some of the things that were cons in my mind. First off, the upper, again, dual layer mesh, breathable, but it's not highly breathable. Unfortunately, it's a trail shoe, so trail shoes kind of have to run this thin line between being breathable, but not too breathable that it lets in dust and debris. I think it does a good job of that, but I think it could have been a little bit cooler in some of these warm temps we've been having here in Colorado. Okay, the next dislike con on the list is the tongue. I normally love a gusseted tongue. This tongue is gusseted, but it's not fully gusseted. There's this little piece of mesh on the inside that attaches from about midway down the tongue, down to the strobel board. You know, the one thing I noticed is instead of attaching to the upper, they attach to the strobel board. I noticed that while I was running, like I wasn't getting a hot spot, but I could feel it on the inside of my instep that it was attached down there when I was going through my stride. Kind of right in this region. It didn't cause any hot spots or irritation, but I noticed it, and just noticing that gusseted mesh was annoying. So if that's something that you think you'd be annoyed by, I just want to give you a heads up. Okay, the lacing system, they updated this a little bit from the 5. You know, even though I couldn't get this super tight, it did fit my foot really well, and I actually got pretty good lockdown. There was no heel slip, but I think that's mainly because I have a fairly wider foot, and so the fit of this shoe fit me well. Naturally without having to crank down on the laces. And so if you've got a narrower foot and you really got to crank these laces down, there may be some fitment issues. If you got a slightly wider foot, you may not need to go up to a 2E. And honestly, I actually liked how it fit. Okay, midsole, cons. This is kind of the big gripe for me. The midsole feels too soft. It's great. It's honestly really comfortable, but it didn't have that responsiveness. It didn't have that spring. It didn't have that performance that I was hoping for on the climbs and on the flats. As I was going uphill, I felt slow. On the flats, I felt slow. I felt slow on the road. It just is a little sluggish, and I think that that's definitely a detractor for me on this shoe. One of the other things with this midsole is it felt a little unstable. This isn't a super wide platform, and there's a lot of cushioning here. It's really soft, and so I felt a bit unstable on rocky terrain. I rolled my ankles a few times. I didn't get injured, luckily, but I was close. You know, like coming down some of that steep terrain, I definitely felt like this shoe had a little bit of a stability issue. Again, I don't normally run in a shoe that's this soft or with this much stack height, so it could be me, but it's something that I wanted to note, that it didn't feel stable as I would have liked out on the trails. Okay, let's talk about the outsole. It's okay. I mean, they put these 3 to 4 millimeter lugs on so you could run trails, but they're not super aggressive. It really didn't like dry, hard packed, dusty trail. There was some grip issues there. This shoe's ultimately designed for people to run on the road and on the trail. I don't think that this outsole would be great on super technical, rocky stuff. I just didn't get that confidence. And so that's one of the big gripes for me. You know, ultimately they're trying to do everything with this outsole. It's road, it's trail, it's a little bit of both. And because of that, I don't think it does any one thing quite well. It's not great on the road. There's a little too much traction there. It's not great on technical trails. There's not enough traction there. So I think when you're trying to be middle of the road and do everything, you can kind of lose what the focus of the purpose of the outsole is really for. Hey, if you guys want more facts on this shoe, make sure that you check out RunRepeat.com. We've got the full listing on this shoe as well as other shoes in this category. You can see all the data, the specs, the facts, other people's reviews. So make sure to go over to RunRepeat.com and check out the Challenger ATR 6. Okay, let's move on to specifics. Okay, first let's start with fit. Honestly, this shoe fit well. You know, a lot of times a Hoka in a D runs fairly narrow on my foot. I think they've widened this in the 5. They've kept that wider toe box in the 6 now. It feels a touch long, but ultimately it fit well. I didn't have a lot of slip. I've mentioned that. Again, I think it's my wide foot in a D. I liked how this shoe felt on my foot. Comfort is next. Obviously, this thing is insane. I mean, it's so comfortable. It's literally like running on pillows. But maybe it's too comfortable. It's a little too soft. Like I said, there's some performance issues that come with that comfort. And I don't know if I would be willing to give those up for the added comfort that I felt in this shoe. Weight, this men's size 9 comes in at 278 grams, 9.7 ounces. So pretty light for a max cushion trail shoe. Not as light as it could be. I mean, this would be great if it was down around 8.5 ounces. But ultimately for this much cushioning underfoot and this much EVA midsole, I think it does a fairly good job in the weight category. Drop and stack, you know, there's not a ton of information out on the internet yet from this. Hoka hasn't sent us over the fact sheet, but the 5 was a 5 millimeter drop, 31 millimeter stack. I think that this has stayed the same. There's not a lot of changes in it. So I'd be confident in saying 5 millimeter drop. And it feels that way too. Durability, Hoka designs a great shoe. I think the upper is gonna hold up. You know, my one issue with durability is the EVA midsole. It's really soft. I mean, if we do this squeeze test here, it's really soft. And just after 3 or 4 runs, I can already see some wrinkles happening. So I think you'll probably get 450 miles maybe out of this shoe. So not super highly durable, but I think it'll be a good training shoe for those runners that maybe aren't putting on tons and tons of miles on one pair. Looks, you know, honestly, I like the way this shoe looks. You know, a lot of Hokas kind of get that clownish shoe look, or at least back in the past. They've made them look a little bit better with this much foam and stack underfoot. I think it looks great. They've done a good job. It's very minimal on the upper, not a lot of seams. The colors aren't crazy. Yeah, I think it looks all right. Price, again, I don't know exact price on this yet because the shoe's not out yet. It drops beginning of November. I think it should be around 130 to 140. The 5 was at 130. I think at 130, 140, this is a pretty decent shoe that can kind of do a little bit of everything. I think there's some good value in there. You got a lot of cushioning. If you're looking for a lot of comfort, I think that there's something here. At 130, I think you get a pretty good deal. All right, let's talk about my overall conclusion on this shoe. You know, this shoe is kind of an in-betweener. It's not gonna be great on super steep, rocky, technical stuff. It's really not a road shoe, although you can wear it on the road. I think it's at home on dirt paths and gravel roads. I think if you're someone who likes to run on that gravel breeze that's next to the bike paths, this would be a great shoe. If you've got dirt trails in your city, I think it's gonna be a great shoe. You know, I do think it has its purpose. I just don't think if you are trying to attack steep, rocky terrain, it's the right shoe. You know, ultimately, this is a great long distance trainer. It's a great long distance shoe. This would be perfect for, like, let's say the Leadville 100, where it's a lot of gravel road, long, plodding along. You know, it's not the fastest shoe. It didn't feel super responsive, but if your goal is to go long and far and maybe at a slower pace, I think that this could be a really comfortable, really enjoyable shoe to wear. You know, also if you're someone that runs 2 to 3 miles before you hit the trails, and 2 to 3 miles on the road after the trails at home, you commute over to the trails instead of driving over to them, this can work. I just have this fear that the second you get to something steep and technical, the grip isn't gonna be what you want from it. So, but ultimately, yeah, comfortable, long distance. It's not exactly the shoe for me. I think I would rather have a trail shoe and a road shoe than one that can do it all. But ultimately, there it is. Please hit the like button below. Also, hit the subscribe button, the bell. If you want to get updated on future shoes, we've got a bunch of Hokas coming through. So if you want to see all our thoughts on a bunch of the newer Hokas that are out right now, stay tuned. Now, I have a question for you guys before you go. Do you commute to the trails in your shoes? Do you need a shoe that can do road and trail all at once? Or do you have two sets of shoes? One for road and one for trail. I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments below on who this shoe really is designed for and if it's the right shoe for you. Thanks again for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. Go do, be, run, and repeat.